I turned 32 on a Tuesday. There was no party, no balloons, no cake with candles. Just a reservation for 6 at a restaurant I found on a quiet corner of the city. One of those places that don't have anything special, but at least the music doesn't scream and the lights don't blind you. I chose that place because I still held on to the absurd hope that my family could be together without yelling, without throwing jabs, without draining my wallet with a smile. That day I got up early like always. I have the routine embedded in my body like a scab. Make coffee, check the account statements, reply to work emails, make the transfers I no longer even think twice about. Camila's rent, my mother's health insurance, my father's car payment. All at 6 in the morning. All without ever receiving a thank you. At 8, I went to the bathroom to shave. In the mirror, as the foam covered my jaw, I saw something that made me stop. 2 gray hairs, very thin but firm, were showing at my right temple. I leaned closer. There they were, stubborn, insolent, as if trying to remind me of every loan, every credit card I put in my name to cover someone else's whims. I don't know why, but that detail hurt more than any complaint. I looked old, not in body, but in soul. Tired, drained. I rinsed my face in silence. I couldn't even fake a birthday smile. I just thought that maybe, just maybe, that dinner I had organized could be a small reset. I wasn't expecting hugs or speeches, but at least a tiny sign that it was still worth rowing in this boat that was never mine, but into which I was placed as if I were the captain. I sent a message to the family group that morning. Made a reservation for tonight. Hope you can come. It's my birthday, in case anyone forgot. Not a single reply. Absolute silence. Just the automatic confirmation that everyone had read it. I got dressed anyway. Wore a button-up shirt, dark pants, even dress shoes. I don't know why. Maybe because I was taught that when you expect respect, you have to give it to yourself first, even from those who least deserve it. On the way to the restaurant, I mentally reviewed every excuse they could come up with for not showing up. That Camila had class, that dad was tired, that mom had a migraine. All possible, all predictable. But I went anyway. I sat at the table for 6 and ordered water. The waiter smiled at me as if he knew, as if he understood how pathetic it all was. A man alone, on his birthday, waiting for the people who have been taking advantage of him for years. But still I stayed. Out of habit, out of pain, out of that stupid hope that, for some reason, still hadn't died. I sat at that table for more than an hour. The restaurant began to fill up. Couples, co-workers leaving the office, a couple of families with noisy kids. Everyone busy with their own lives, everyone with someone. I was still there, with my half-empty glass of water and the chair beside me that became more and more uncomfortable to look at. I ordered something light, just to avoid suspicion. The waiter asked, "Should we wait for the others?" And I replied with a, "I don't think they're coming," that cracked in my throat. I pretended to look at the menu while I swallowed the lump. At some point, I stopped looking at the door. When I got home, the first thing I did was take off my shoes, as if that gesture marked the end of a useless effort. I left the shirt on the chair, sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, checked my work tasks out of habit, and that's when I saw the notification. The family group. That damned bubble with the name Los Morales House with Garden. That now triggered a sort of automatic disgust. Mom had written, "Let us know if you're throwing your little party. Who would even celebrate with you? Grow up." I read the message 3 times. Not out of disbelief, but something worse, for confirmation. For that part of me that needed to verify that, indeed, the poison came from the very place where I should have found shelter. Then came the fireworks. Camila, like a filterless teenager, sent a sticker of a cartoon laughing and pointing. Those mocking stickers that seem harmless, but are daggers disguised as emojis. Then Oscar, the uncle, sent a voice note. I opened out of habit. It was laughter. Not a single word, just prolonged laughs, as if my birthday were a collective joke. And to top it all off, Dad reacted with a ha emoji. That was it. That's when something broke. There were no screams, no rage, just complete silence, like when an elevator stops and you know something's wrong, but you haven't felt the jolt yet. I kept staring at the screen a few seconds longer. I didn't write a speech, didn't make a scene. I just typed "got it" and closed the laptop. I stood up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not a loud or euphoric clarity. It was as if suddenly everything had clicked into its exact place. I went straight to the safe where I keep important documents. I took the car papers, the Mercedes I bought, and that Dad drove as if it were his. I also grabbed the cards linked to the main account, the ones they used for emergencies that always turn out to be dinners, gadgets, or getaways I never enjoyed. I opened the banking app and canceled Camila's rent transfer. Same with Mom's health insurance. I shut down Dad's additional credit card and blocked future purchases. My hand trembled a bit, but not from fear. It was something else. It was as if my body was only now beginning to feel the weight of the years I spent saying yes when I wanted to scream no. Then I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror again, and those gray hairs were still there. They no longer felt like a threat. Now they were a testimony. The visible marks of the price I paid for carrying an entire family without anyone ever asking if I needed to be carried too. That night, I slept with my phone on airplane mode, not to avoid calls, but because, for the first time in a long time, I had nothing left to explain. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, not from anxiety or habit, but because something inside me knew that this day couldn't be just another one. I had crossed the line, and there was no going back. Still a bit tense, I got up, made coffee like always, but this time I didn't open my email or check my balance. This time I wasn't the provider, the rescuer, the shield. I was finally me. The first thing was the Mercedes. That car had been in my name for 3 years, but I hadn't touched the steering wheel in a long time. It was Dad who used it daily, as if it were a natural extension of his rights. They always called it Dad's car, even though the lease payments came from my account, even though I was the one who signed every paper. I took the documents, called the insurance company to confirm coverage, and without warning, I drove by the family house. I rang the doorbell. Camila opened the door, barefoot and looking like she'd just gotten out of bed. She didn't say good morning, just rolled her eyes and walked away without a word. I went straight to the garage. Dad was sitting in the living room, staring at his phone. He didn't even bother to greet me. He didn't have to. I took the keys from the rack like someone claiming what's rightfully his, got in the car, started it, and with the first roar of the engine, I felt something inside me unlock. I didn't look back. That same day, I drove it to the dealership, told them I was ready to sell, no small talk. They offered a fair price, and I accepted without hesitation. The money wasn't the point. What mattered was the act, breaking the illusion that everything in their lives was eternal and unconditional just because I was footing the bill. I went back home and opened the bank portal again. I needed to clean it all up. I canceled the credit cards I'd opened for Mom, for Camila, even an additional one Oscar used whenever he claimed work was slow. Every click was a relief. Every confirmation peeled away like a scab from my skin. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. It was already noon when, without thinking much, I dialed Julian's number. He'd been there since high school, the only one who knew me without masks, without the label of the responsible son or the one who fixes everything. He answered with his usual tone, laid back, half teasing. "Happy birthday, asshole," he said, laughing a little. I stayed silent for a few seconds and finally managed to say, "I canceled everything. Julian. The car, the cards, the transfers. It's over." On the other end, there was a small pause. Then his reply hit me right in the chest. "About damn time, man." And in that phrase, there was no judgment, no surprise, just recognition. As if all this time, he'd been waiting for me to finally open my eyes. He told me he was proud of me, that he knew how hard it was to cut a cord when that cord doesn't connect. It chokes. We talked for half an hour, not to make plans or for me to justify myself, but just to breathe, because that's what that call was, a breath. A reminder that I wasn't alone, even if my family tried to make me feel otherwise. That day, for the first time in a long time, I had lunch without my phone on the table, without waiting for the next request, disguised as an emergency. I sat down in front of my plate, took a sip of wine, and felt like the world was just a little more mine. Because sometimes, real freedom doesn't begin with a scream, but with a quiet that's enough. The days that followed felt like a strange mix of lightness and alertness, as if my body were celebrating the breaking of chains, but my mind knew the war was only just beginning. Something inside me kept saying I hadn't yet seen the real bottom of all this, that the surface, cruel as it seemed, was just the varnish on a structure that had been rotten for a long time. So I started digging, not out of paranoia, but out of necessity. I opened old folders, checked files saved on hard drives, logged into banking platforms with long-forgotten usernames. I began to cross-reference data, dates, amounts, transactions. It was like digging with bare hands in the soil where I had buried the signs myself for years. And that's when everything started to come out. The first blow came with a bank document I vaguely remembered, a loan that, according to the paper, I had requested at age 26. But at that time, I was abroad, finishing a course I paid for with my savings. I checked the signature. It was mine, but not quite. A clumsy imitation, just good enough to pass if no one questioned it. I sat in front of the digital file, zoomed in several times, compared it with official documents. The stroke, the slant, the final flourish. It was clear. My father had forged my signature. They used my name, my credit history, my identity, to get money I never even touched. I don't know how long I stayed there, staring at that file as if it could talk to me. I didn't cry. I just felt cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from the air around you, but from inside. The kind of emptiness that only the most intimate betrayal can cause. Then came the thing with the insurance policy. I remember it was after a big promotion at work. My salary had gone up, along with my medical coverage, insurance, and other benefits. It all came in a welcome package I didn't even bother to go through properly. Back then I was happy, busy, confident. I signed everything without suspicion. Months later, I saw on the insurer's portal that there was an active life policy under my name. Strangely, it wasn't listed as part of my official package. I dug deeper, and when I requested the full breakdown, they sent a copy by certified mail. I opened it with trembling hands. The listed beneficiaries were my mother and father. No signature of mine authorized that designation. It was a separate policy, set up using personal data only someone close could have. It had been activated just days after my salary increase. Once again, the signature looked like mine, but now I knew where to look. I stared at the document in silence, and only one thought crossed my mind. To them, I'm worth more dead than alive. That burned, not because of what it meant literally, but because of what it symbolized, because of what it revealed about how they saw me. I wasn't a son. I was an investment, a kind of economic safety net disguised as blood ties. I thought that had to be the bottom, that I couldn't possibly uncover anything worse. But then came Camila. I went through the account statement from the past 3 years. The expenses tied to her education were grotesque, not because of the amounts, but because of their uselessness. Payments to 3 different universities, none completed. Plane tickets to conference cities that just happened to coincide with festival and concert seasons. ATM withdrawals abroad. Designer clothing purchases. All of it disguised under the label of professional development. 45,000 pesos a month. Just on her. Just for her alternate reality. While I limited myself to buying only the essentials, budgeting at the supermarket, saying I didn't feel like going out, when in reality, I just couldn't afford to spend what I didn't have. I gathered everything. I printed documents, screenshots, transaction records. I started building a physical file, complete with dividers and labels. On the cover, I wrote a simple but heavy title in black marker. The truth. That folder was my silent manifesto. The material evidence of what my soul already knew. What I felt wasn't resentment. It was something more subtle, sadder. Like when you realize a house didn't collapse all at once, but had been cracking for years without anyone noticing. And I was the only one who stayed living in it. Until now. I thought, naively, that the truth would be enough. That with the evidence laid out, with the strings uncovered and cut, they'd simply walk away, ashamed, maybe in silence, maybe with restrained anger. But no, families don't apologize when you expose them. Families retaliate, and they came at me with everything. First came the mother, of course. A call 11:15 at night. I hadn't seen the number, but I recognized it instantly. I answered cautiously. She didn't say hello. I only heard a feigned whisper. Your father is in terrible shape. His chest hurts. He refuses to go to the hospital, says you've killed him with grief. A theatrical pause. Not a real sob. Not a voice in the background asking for help. Just her, waiting for me to rush, and like so many times before, if you don't care, well, we'll know who to blame if something happens to him. I hung up without a word. Not out of cruelty, but because there was no point in explaining that she couldn't manipulate me anymore. I sat in silence, staring at the ceiling. It was so predictable it hurt more because it was repeated than because it was new. Then they escalated. On a random Tuesday, while I was in a meeting at my office, I heard shouting at reception. When I stepped out, I saw Camila and my father demanding to see me. She was crying, or pretending to, and he was raising his voice, accusing me of abandoning them, of leaving them out on the street. Is that what that shitty company taught you? To spit in the face of your own blood? The scene was so outrageous that I had to ask the security guard to escort them out. He did so gently, but firmly. I felt my coworkers' eyes on me, some with pity, others with shock. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, took a deep breath in front of the mirror, repeated a phrase I had been using as a mantra. You're not hurting anyone. You're setting boundaries. And that, too, is self-love. The worst came afterward. Silent. Poisonous. Camila. The same Camila who couldn't finish a single semester of anything. Found in social media her most successful career yet. Professional victim. She posted a thread telling how her successful businessman brother had left her homeless, cutting off support without warning, after years of all of us holding the family together. She said our mother was depressed, our father wasn't eating, that money changed him. She included an old photo of us hugging on Christmas and another of herself crying in the street in front of a suitcase. Obviously staged, but effective. The thread went viral. People who knew nothing started flooding my inbox with insults. They called me heartless, a narcissist, a deserter. Some even offered to help her, as if I were a monster and she an orphan. I read it all with a mix of anger and sadness. Not because of the lie, but because I knew that narrative was easier for them to accept than the truth. That's when I knew I couldn't keep going alone. I called Sofia Ramirez, a lawyer, friend of colleague. I told her everything. My voice didn't shake. I showed her documents, recordings, screenshots. Sofia didn't interrupt. She just nodded, with that calm of someone who's seen this story before. You're doing the right thing, she said. But be ready. They're not done yet. She recommended I record everything, calls, visits, messages, that I protect my public image, document every attack. For the first time, I didn't feel like a son in crisis, but like someone defending himself from a toxic system, a survivor planning his strategy. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept with the door closed, but without fear. I slept with dignity. I had learned to live with silence, but not with injustice. I could handle being insulted, being painted as the villain, but I wasn't going to stay quiet while they rewrote the story to suit themselves. Not anymore. It was Sofia who gave me the idea. What isn't documented doesn't exist, and what is silenced gets repeated. That's how Silenced Voices was born. A simple blog. No faces. No names. Just facts. Just data. I decided it wouldn't be an emotional reckoning, but a meticulous expose. I uploaded edited audio clips to protect identities, screenshots of family chats where they laughed at me after a cruel birthday message, bank statements showing recurring payments on credit cards I didn't use, and above all, the documents that changed everything, the life insurance policy, taken out right after my salary increase, listing both parents as beneficiaries, without my knowledge. That's where I wrote the sentence that went viral without me even trying. To my family, I'm worth more dead than alive. I posted it with a scan of the clause specifying the $1,000,000 payout in the event of accidental death. I didn't name them. I didn't share personal stories. I just let the facts speak. And they did. In less than a week, the blog had thousands of visits. It was being shared in support forums for victims of financial abuse by family members, on social media, by people telling their own stories. I started receiving anonymous emails from strangers saying, "Thank you. You gave me courage." And something inside me changed. I was no longer the broken man afraid of his own family. I was someone who had held up a mirror, not just to them, but to many others as well. The consequences were immediate. First, silence. The family group turned into a tomb. Then, the desperate moves. The father, who until then had only spoken in scattered phrases during his drunken episodes, decided to sue me for defamation. According to him, I had attacked his honor. He filed a lawsuit in a local court, and although I felt a stab of fear at first, Sophia reassured me. "Don't worry. They'll dig their own grave. Just stay firm." On the day of the hearing, the judge, a man with a weathered face and a tired voice, flipped through the file without looking up. He listened to the father mumble excuses and talk about betrayal, family, destroyed morals. And then, he read aloud a part of the blog. "I'm worth more dead than alive." The silence in the courtroom was thick. The judge lowered his glasses, looked at the father, and said, "Do you understand the gravity of this statement? Did you know about this policy?" The father tried to evade, blame the mother, the insurance company, the weather if he could have. The judge interrupted him. "This court is not a forum for excuses. It's a place for truth." The lawsuit was dismissed. Not only that, the judge ordered an investigation into the origin of the funds used to pay for the policy. "Just in case," he said. "I didn't ask for it. He decided it." I knew then with certainty. Truth, when held without hatred, carries its own weight. And I was no longer just a victim or survivor. I was becoming something more powerful. Witness, narrator, boundary. And in the midst of it all, even if I didn't say it out loud, I started to believe that yes, maybe I did deserve something like peace. After the hearing, after the echo of that phrase being read aloud in front of a judge, "I'm worth more dead than alive," I thought silence would follow. Surrender. Acceptance, even if forced. But I was wrong. They didn't know how to lose. They never had. For my family, losing isn't a stage, it's a personal offense. So they struck back. First it was subtle. An alert in my inbox. "Your company has received a new review." I clicked the link and found a venomous text. It said that Salukian's Entendido was a scam, that I stole money from the elderly, that I used illegal software. I thought it was a coincidence, until more came in. 1, 2, 5, 8 reviews in a matter of days. All false, all posted from newly created accounts, all with the same writing pattern. I checked the IPs from which the complaints had been sent, using a tool we had for tracking fraud. Most came from the same place, a cyber cafe 6 blocks from my new home. It wasn't a coincidence. Nothing was. Carlos, who was still with me through all this, went with me to the place. We pretended to be customers, rented a computer, and chatted with the attendant. It didn't take long to tell us, laughing, that a somewhat agitated man came in often to post things, always using the same computer. He showed us the history. The username, Oscar 1981. My uncle. Uncle Oscar, the same one who had shared voice notes laughing on my birthday, was now writing fake reviews trying to ruin my professional reputation. The same man who had benefited for years from my work was now trying to stain everything. But it didn't stop there. A week later, I got an urgent call. It was my mother. Her voice pretended to tremble. "Your father is in critical condition. He needs emergency surgery. We have no way to pay. He's in the hospital." I said nothing. I hung up. Sophia had taught me not to react in the heat of the moment. Instead of rushing to see what was happening, I paused. I verified. I called the hospital she mentioned. The doctor supposedly treating my father didn't appear in their records. He didn't exist. And yet, a medical report signed by him had been submitted to an insurance company in an attempt to activate a major medical policy. It was Sophia who found the key. She cross-checked data, spoke to contacts, and confirmed the unthinkable. The doctor had been bribed. Oscar, my uncle, had paid him to fake a diagnosis and push the claim through as an emergency. The goal? For me, as the holder of the family insurance, to approve the payment without checking. But this time I wasn't the same person. We gathered evidence. Screenshots, emails, recordings. We submitted everything to the medical board. The investigation was swift. The doctor was suspended. The insurance company sent me a letter of apology. And I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt tired. It was exhausting to live like this. As if every decision had to be fortified like a castle. As if the enemy bore your surname and shared your features. But I also understood something. Resisting without striking back was losing all over again. So I acted. I sent one last email to the family. Just one. No insults, no threats, no complaints. It simply said, "This is the end." And for the first time, none of them replied. It took me years to understand that sometimes love looks too much like blackmail, and that a family is not defined by blood ties, but by the boundaries one learns to defend. And I had finally learned. After that, "this is the end," something unexpected followed. Silence. A heavy silence. Not peaceful. It wasn't the calm I had imagined, but it was a pause, the kind of pause that comes before a fall. At first, I didn't know anything. I stayed away from social media, blocked numbers, let Sophia filter any attempts at contact. I wanted to breathe, rebuild myself in my new home, continue running my company without fear that everything would collapse due to some family slander. But the world is small, and gossip travels fast. Very fast. It was Carlos who gave me the first news. He sent me a photo by message, a rundown building on the outskirts of the city. Below, in the caption, it read, "They moved here. No parking, no luxuries." It was them, the Morales family. My parents, Valeria, all of them. They had to leave the old house, the one with the pool nobody used, but everyone showed off in photos. The one I financed for years without being allowed to invite a single friend. Now they lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, with no garden, no terrace, no guest room. And that was only the beginning. Valeria, my sister, the eternal student of imaginary degrees, the academic traveler who couldn't finish a course longer than 3 months, tried to step into the real world. She got hired as a cashier at a convenience store. Lasted 2 weeks. Then as a receptionist at a gym. Got fired for arguing with a customer. After that, she started selling makeup from a catalog. Posted motivational quotes while blocking me on social media. I saw her once from a distance. She was leaving an OXXO in uniform. Walking fast, head down. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt pity. Not for her situation, but because she still believed the world owed her something. My father, well, he went under the way only proud men do. Silently, but dragging everything down with him. He started drinking more. Lost the occasional jobs he had as a consultant. Lost his friends, his reputation in the circles where he once felt like a king. The last times anyone saw him, he was alone, sitting on a bench, staring at his phone like he was waiting for a call that would never come. Maybe mine. My mother stopped getting invited to her weekly coffee meetups. Her circle, the same one that criticized me for not honoring my own, now avoided her. They said, the Morales family just isn't the same anymore. And they were right. Because without my money, without my support, without my silence, they were falling apart. And about Oscar, what can I say? The jokester uncle, the one who lived off bets, favors, and manipulation, simply vanished. I got an email from a distant cousin. Your uncle skipped town, left debts all over the neighborhood. They say he's in another state, hiding. I wasn't even surprised. Same story as always. The ones who laugh the loudest are the first to run when the consequences arrive. I didn't lift a finger. I didn't attack them. I didn't expose them further. I let the truth, that folder I titled The Truth and posted on the blog, do its work. Justice doesn't always need a judge. Sometimes it just needs time and a little light. And in that fall, in that family implosion, I realized something that marked me. When you stop holding up what's rotten, you don't destroy it. You just let it collapse on its own. And even if it hurts, even if I sometimes wake up with guilt or nostalgia, I remain firm in one certainty. Not saving them was the only way to save myself. Time passes, even if you don't want it to. Even if the wound stays open, even if the phone stays silent, even if the days seem to repeat themselves, it still passes. And one day, without warning, you realize a year has gone by. A year since I said no more. Since my 32nd birthday became the dividing line between submission and freedom. A year since the Morales family stopped having me on their emotional payroll. And the strange thing is that, despite everything, the heart doesn't forget. Not completely. It's not nostalgia. It's memory. It's that hollow feeling you get when you let go of something heavy and suddenly miss the weight, even though it hurt you. It was just an ordinary afternoon. I was reviewing some reports for the company when the doorbell rang. It was Donna Teresa, my neighbor, holding a small box in her hands. The delivery guy left this for you. He didn't want to wait, she said. The box was wrapped in plain paper, no sender listed. But the sender was obvious. I knew it even before opening it. Inside was a wooden spinning top, old, worn, with my name carved on the bottom. I made it when I was 7 or 8 in a crafts class. It had always sat on the living room shelf, among family photos and ceramic ornaments. Sometimes I used it as an excuse to talk about my childhood with visitors. Look, I made that top myself, and they'd say it with pride, as if it were proof I'd once been a happy child. There was also a note, written in a shaky, barely legible hand. I miss you, Mom. I read it once. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just folded it and placed it next to the top, on the same shelf where now it sat because I had chosen to put it there, not because someone else had. I didn't call. I didn't respond directly. I didn't open the door to my heart just because someone knocked. I'm no longer that child seeking approval. I no longer need to hear good son, because I was more than that. I was a pillar, I was a shield, I was silence, and I broke inside for years without anyone noticing. I called Sophia, my lawyer. I asked her to draft a response, simple, respectful, precise. I dictated it word for word. Thank you for the memory. I wish you peace. Nothing more, nothing less. It was the first time in that entire story that I responded without guilt, without anger, without sarcasm, just with the certainty of someone who has done their part and has nothing left to give. I closed that chapter without drama, without forced reconciliation, without the kind of superficial forgiveness that only serves to keep up appearances. The top remains on my shelf, not as an anchor, but as a symbol, not what I lost, but of what I reclaimed. My right to choose myself, because there are bonds best honored with distance, and some goodbyes heal more than 1,000 empty hugs. 33. I didn't celebrate with a party, or with family, or with that anxious need to pretend everything's fine just to avoid worrying anyone. This time was different. It was light, as if I'd finally learned to breathe with a full chest, without the weight of owing something with every breath. Carlos showed up with a bottle of Chilean wine that, according to him, he'd been saving since I started taking out the emotional trash from my life, as he calls it. Laura brought a passion fruit cheesecake she made herself, saying she wasn't about to let one of my birthdays go by without something sweet. And Dona Teresa, with that calm only those who have lived much and kept more to themselves can have, brought some hand-cut beef empanadas and made us promise to enjoy them without guilt. We sat at the small table in my apartment. No tablecloth, no candles, no more ritual than honest laughter and shared relief. We didn't talk much about the past. There was no need. We had dissected it, cried over it, and understood it in the months before. That night was to celebrate what had remained standing after the fire, and what had bloomed in the ashes. Carlos raised his glass and said, straight to the point, to the hard decisions that set us free. I smiled, because if anyone knew what it took to reach that toast, it was him. He saw me fall apart, held me when I didn't know whether to stay or go. And when I finally left, he was the first to tell me I had done the right thing, even before I could believe it myself. We toasted, we drank, we ate, we laughed, and when the night ended and everyone went home, I stayed alone in the warm silence of my living room. I washed the dishes slowly, turned off the lights, poured myself one last glass of wine, and took it over to the shelf where, among books, a plant, and a few pictures of me in the mountains, rested the wooden spinning top. I held it in my hands, spun it once on the table. It spun slowly as if time weighed it down, but it didn't fall, just like me. And there, without applause, without an audience, without needing validation, I whispered to myself, almost as if saying it to the child I once was, to the young man who got lost fulfilling roles no one ever thanked him for. I am the architect of my peace. And with that, the day ended, and everything else began.